Today we're going to learn about a German football club, but we're not going to talk much about football itself, because for FC St Pauli, rarely is the performance on the pitch of paramount importance. For a club that's been around since 1910, as you can see across the bottom of their badge here, the last 40 years have been nothing less than a cultural phenomenon, as this club has taken on anti-fascist, anti-racist, and tolerance-focused values inside and outside of the club. This is a rare thing to see and a unique club. So today, let's talk about FC St Pauli and what makes them so special in this modern world of football that is so focused on money, results, and marketing. First, a couple footballing and jersey things about the club. They currently play in the Zweite Bundesliga. That's the second tier in German football. This is their home kit from 2009-2010. And as you can see, brown is their home color. That is a really uncommon one for clubs around the world. The red and the white that you see are these pretty cool bars across the middle are also colors for the club. As you can see, they're also implemented in the badge, which is right down the middle. Usually you'll see that over the heart for many jerseys around the world. St Pauli as a club hadn't done much of consequence until the late 70s, when the advent of the AIDS epidemic around the world was a fulcrum in which the St Pauli quarter of the city of Hamburg in northern Germany started to shift sociopolitically. The quarter of St Pauli, which is a portion of the larger city of Hamburg, which was about 2 million people, had about 30,000 people at the time, so it was kind of a smaller area. It's generally where you would find people of the proletariat, so dock workers, prostitutes, people that are downtrodden, foreigners in this area in general. As the 70s moved into the 80s, a lot of the values in the area shifted into that you would call punk rock values, leftist values, autonomous values in this area. You would find those same values on the terraces of their stadium, the Millantor Stadion, where they still play. These fans wanted to bring how they were feeling in life and expressing things in every moment of their life into watching the game. As you'll see about their record on the footballing pitch, it hasn't been about football for this club and for their supporters. It's a cultural phenomenon. It's something that brings people together. It's about community and living the values outside of the stadium as well as in. The atmosphere you're going to find in this stadium on match day is very hard to rival in German football, and that truly is saying something since it's an impassioned area for this sport. When you go into the stadium, you're going to find fans as well as banners on the stadium that speak to their values. On two different stands, you'll find in German banners that say, "No football for fascists," and "No man is illegal." That's just the mentality. The guidelines that dictate how you act as a supporter and as a member of this club are paramount to them. Symbology is a key thing for them, and for a club that has a very nice badge here, there is a symbol that pretty much exceeds it as far as importance for the club, and that is the skull and crossbones. There's a lot of legend behind when and who brought this to the club in the 1980s, but today you'll see this flying on flags there and around the world as a symbol of the St Pauli philosophy. By my tradition in these videos, we talk about trophies that the club's won. That's not what this club is about, but here we go. 1977, they won the Zweite Bundesliga Nord. They won 4 Regional Liga Nord titles, the latest one in 2007. And they've won a couple local cups in Hamburg, 4 different ones. The club's rivalry match is called the Hamburger Stadt Derby, or the Hamburg City Derby. That one's against Hamburger SV, or HSV. With that being one of the most important clubs in German football, the win column leads heavily towards them, but that's not the point here yet again for St Pauli. This match takes on a lot of socio-political tones, with this being the People's Club and HSV essentially being the people from the suburbs. Despite the gulf in wins between these two clubs on the pitch, because that's not the point for St Pauli, this one still is one of the most important matches in all of German football. On match day, the atmosphere in and outside of the stadiums in the city is electric. So let's dive deeper into the socio-political nature of this club's culture. It's the most important thing to the club, and they are left-leaning. In a time in the 80s when hooliganism was huge in the sport, people just wanting to go out and get into a scrap and a fight on behalf of their club, or just to get into some violence, most of that fueled by right-wing tendencies. This club stood back against that with left-wing tendencies that were anti-fascist and anti-racist. Those values have remained till today and even strengthened. Most of the projects that this club gets into, whether it's them or their fans or both, are always pointed towards the values of the club. Things that since 2009 they have written down as what are called Leitlinien, or guidelines. The club is well and truly run and dictated by its members. In Germany, there's a rule called the 50+1 rule. This essentially means that any club around Germany, its membership has to be made up at least 51% by individual members. The rest can be around corporations or companies that can be a part of that membership, but they can't have a majority stake. This keeps the ownership and the dictation of how a club is run in the hands of the people that actually support it. Fans of the club have, and still do, frequently run fanzines or blogs on behalf of the club, and they rarely are talking about football, more about the values of the club, projects that the club is undertaking, things that are of importance to the city and specifically to the district of St Pauli. The club takes it very seriously about profit going back to those who have made it. Laborers, workers, people who are supporting the club. It doesn't go into the club and they hoard it. They support it out into their community. At this club, 2/3 of the money that they make on profit goes back into their youth sector, so their academy, as well as any projects that are there specifically for youth that can't afford to have a sport to play, to have structure. It's well and good to have these kind of guidelines, write them down and express them like many clubs and just many entities around the world will, but acting on them, and living all of them is what makes this club different from many other around the world. A story that expresses how they live their values and live all of their values comes from 2019 when a Turkish midfielder for the club was dismissed after a social media post where the club had seen that he dictated a solidarity stance with an act of war when Turkey invaded northern Syria. The thing that gives them their live all values mentality here is while they had immediately dismissed that player from the club, they kept him on their payroll until he found a job at another club. This going towards their pro-union rights stance. There are many other projects, initiatives, and just cultural things about this club that are of interest to many people. I'll list a couple of them up here for you to concern if this is a club that you're into, or maybe it isn't. Either way, there's also now a footballing element for the first time in many seasons that is of interest with this club. With only a few games left in the Zweite Bundesliga season this year, you'll find St Pauli sitting in second place, which is not a common place to find this club, no less this far into a season. They have the opportunity to get promoted to the Bundesliga for only the 7th time in their history. Players like Jackson Irvine, the Australian midfielder and their captain, as well as Marcel Hartl, have been critical for the club in this push on the footballing pitch, where it's an unexpected thing for this club to be this far into the season, this far up the table. So that's your 101 rundown on the history and the culture of St. Pauli, one of the most interesting and fun clubs to follow in German football.